Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello and welcome back to the channel where it is time for a big change and all four of the cars that are currently lined up behind me are going to be departing. Yes, you heard that correctly. We're going to be saying farewell soon to all four of these Shmeemobiles. The BMW M3 Competition, the Porsche Taycan Turbo S, the Toyota GR Yaris and the Mercedes AMG G63. Now, as you may know from the channel, over the last year, the collection has been growing fast. We now have quite a few of the cars here. There are 3 that are currently absent, but in fact, in 2021, I collected 9 cars in total and only said farewell to 2. Of course, the Shmuseum gave rise to the opportunity to pick up cars like the C63 Black Series, like buying back my old Vantage Roadster, like picking up a Clio reminiscent of my first car ever, but it's time to shuffle things around a little bit. This is a fairly spontaneous decision, but today I'll talk a bit more about the reasons behind each of the 4 cars and touch on what's going to be coming in to replace them. I've actually just been sitting down to work out the total mileage covered by my entire collection of Skittles during the last year. So during 2021, including the 3 absent cars, the Ford GT, which is at service, the Shelby GT500, which is in Miami, the AMG GT Black Series in Dubai, plus the 2 cars that I owned for a part of last year, so the AMG GTR Pro and the Porsche 718 GT4, and of course, all of this lot, so the Focus RS Heritage, the STO, the Vantage Roadster, the 2 McLarens, the Clio, the SLS Black Series. Of course, the F1 car did not drive any miles. The 4 that I mentioned we're talking about today, the C Black Series, the GTR Roadster, the GT8, and the Audi RS3, the team car. If you add it all up, last year, between all of the team, between all of the events and road trips and different things that we did, the total mileage was 38,000 miles, 61,000 kilometers. Now, of course, that's quite a high number, especially when it might sometimes look like cars don't drive all that much. And I will run through which cars drove how much today, but primarily we're going to be focusing on these 4 and talking dailies, talking about the cars that I suppose are more practical and used perhaps a little bit more frequently in the cases of some of them, but not necessarily all of them, as you probably know. Now, when it comes to the entire collection, of course, there are new things on the horizon, and I'm often having to consider the financial side of things. This is where Approved Motor Finance come in, who I work with in terms of the funding on pretty much all of the cars here in the collection. And with the new arrivals like the Ferrari SF90 due imminently, the Lotus Emira and the Zenvo TSR-S, plus some more things I'd like to talk about a little bit later in this video that I might not have mentioned up to this point. Of course, it means I have to be a little bit head screwed on in terms of which cars have equity in them, what my plans are, and how all of this adds together. And we'll touch a bit more on that as well. So today, we're saying basically farewell in the near future to these 4. Let's run through them one at a time. Let's start with the G63, which I think is probably the biggest surprise to have included on this list, and it will certainly, of the 4 cars, be the one that I'm the sorriest to say farewell to, but there is one particularly strong reason to let it depart from the garage that I will get to in a second, plus it might not be the last time we see a G-Wagon in the Shmeemobiles. Let's have a quick recap, though, on this G63, which I picked up back in June 2019, so over 2.5 years ago, quickly approaching 3 years. Since then, it has covered 17 and a bit thousand miles in total. It's been used on a number of different trips and adventures, occasionally as a tow car as well. In fact, for the collection day of the GTR Pro, picking up the Senna from Chartwell, and also to take the Senna to the Nürburgring, and then I continued to visit my friend Ger Collector down in Munich to collect his SVJ and take it to Novatec. So I've had a few very good memories with this. When it was brand new in Obsidian Black originally, we did the Topaz skin. Now, we made the colours to match the Senna, some parts of which we have here, in the cerulean blue with the exposed navy carbon fibre, and we did the same here. And this is the peelable paint spray, and I have to say that 2.5 years on, this has held up miraculously well. Normal paint by this point would be covered in swirl marks, scratched up. There's no paint protection film on top. It has a built-in protective layer, and the result and the quality, even this far on, is really, really very high. We also went to Opus for the installation of the Akrapovic exhaust, which sounds monstrous, and to have the switchable system for the tune as well, should we wish. But there's something about those kind of noises, the feel of the G17200 or so. I did the upgraded interior in here, and it's a really, really nice place. Actually, just quickly in here, the Obsidian Black and the Schuckle-proved G Mercedes-Benz plaque that it wears on the B pillar. So I will be very, very sorry to see the G-Wagon go. But like I say, there's a strong reason at the moment, and that is all down to the market price on a car like this. In fact, at this moment in time, this car is worth about list price or a little bit more, which is totally bizarre. And of course, all linked to the supply of new cars, the backlog of orders for something like this. And it means to me, as a businessman at heart, it's time to say farewell. I don't drive the car all that much. There might be something coming which will serve many of the purposes that this does, which I can get to in just a little bit. So basically, I feel like it's time that I've enjoyed my ownership. Perhaps in the future, there will be another one to arrive. But for now, it's going to be time to say farewell to the G63, even though that might sound a little bit bizarre, but do bear with me. Next up comes the GR Yaris, Toyota's hot hatch that came to so much acclaim and massive hype that I picked up in December 2020, so I've owned it for about 14 months and covered very few miles in that time, I must be honest. It's only about 1,700. Now, we have done a fair few modifications to the car. To quickly recap, we did the livery with Dub Customs, we went to Miltech for the exhaust system, we added the Giacuso styling kit, we did the Stern Performance rear seat delete, the Aventuri intake, the Samco hoses, and a few other small things around it as well. And it is a cool car. It's a great car to drive, as I spoke about recently when I was talking about the new GRMN version of the Yaris that's been made available for the Japanese market only. But I have to confess, it's never really grabbed my heartstrings in the way that the Focus RS did when we did the Red Edition project. And another thing about this car is where the values are at the moment. They are still at about list price or even higher, just like with the G63, due to the demand and the limited supply, particularly here in the UK and Europe, of the GR Yaris. Now, we actually pre-agreed where this car is going to be heading to next quite a long time ago. So it's just a case basically of handing it over when the time comes, which I will be sad to see, because I wanted to do a little bit more with it. I wanted to get it to the Nürburgring, but I've basically run out of time, and all of the trips that I've got planned for the next 3 or 4 months don't really leave any time to get it over there either. So it's time, I think, for me, given it never really appealed to me in the way that the Focus RS did, to basically say goodbye to the GR Yaris in the very near future. As we move to the Porsche Taycan, you will start to detect a bit of a theme here, also trading at the moment for very strong money. Now, I collected the Taycan Turbo S back in November 2020, so I've owned it for a year and 2 or 3 months or so and driven 6,500 miles, but it has actually been my real daily driver, going to and from home to the Shmeemuseum and back, covering short distances, enjoying the effortlessness and calmness of commuting in an electric car. Now, for a bit of an experiment, we did take it all the way to Munich to do the 1,500 mile journey to test out the EV infrastructure, and that was actually really quite a success. I've enjoyed the car. It was my first foray into the world of electric cars, and we initially did some visual changes. So did the Innositec Midnight Green wrap, Dub Customs. We matched the factory Aurum Gold wheels with Whoops Will Fix It. We added the Xyrus Engineering carbon parts here and on the lip spoiler at the back, for example. And it's really been a very, very nice thing. Impressive to see on the drag strip when we did some races with this, for example, up against the Senna, which had actually left for dead off the line before the Senna does eventually catch it up before the quarter mile. But it's a car that I think the time has come, again, because I've experienced owning it. And when it comes to electric cars, I would actually like one that's quite significantly smaller and less heavy, and perhaps considering actually splitting out into having 2 different electric cars, more of which we can touch on in a moment. But also 3 months ago, when I looked at the values, it was down a fair chunk, probably £30,000 or so. Nowadays, it's actually back closer to list price again. And this is a particularly highly spec'd car with the panoramic roof, with the large wheels, with the passenger display, with the upgraded interior, with the gold inlays, with basically everything that they could have. It was a car that was effectively sitting at the dealer. I was the first owner of it, but when I saw it, I thought, had to have that. Perfect spec, ticked every single box, including the Porsche active chassis control as well, which was something I really wanted on the car. So like I say, no real reason to say farewell, other than keen to try a different side of the EV world, something smaller, something a little bit different, and the fact that values are so high, which means if I'm going to sell it, now is a pretty good time to do so. The fourth car to discuss today then, the BMW M3, the G80 M3 Competition that I picked up about 9 months ago, but in that time have driven just shy of 2,000 miles, which for a car as dailyable and all-round as this is not a whole lot. But the main reason for that, is in fact because of the Taycan. So I actually bought that car at about the same time I ordered the M3 without really knowing what the EV world was going to be like, but I've enjoyed it so much that the M3 pretty much ended up taking a back seat. Now we're going to be saying farewell to each of those three in the imminent future. The M3 is going to be hanging around for a little bit longer until something else might be arriving in a couple of months' time. So I will continue to daily this at the moment. In fact, it will become, let's say, my main daily. So I'm going to make one change to it, which is actually to remove the aftermarket exhaust that we installed, because I want it to be a bit more peaceful, a bit more discreet, let's say, if I arrive home late at night, because I am often here late into the evenings and I like crawling back home in something pretty quiet and comfortable and peaceful. So we will do similarly with the M3, but try and get a few more miles on it, try to get more experience of it, because it is a great machine and it has a lot more, I think, still to be enjoyed really while I have it as part of the cars in the garage. So I'm not ready yet to say completely farewell to it, and then we'll, I guess, wave it off a couple of months down the line. This is a lot at once, but it does tend to happen around this time of year, the colder months, being indoors more and thinking what the rest of the year is going to look like in terms of journeys, road trips, adventures, being in different countries, what each of the cars are going to be used for, hence a bit of a shuffle around after what was a very busy last year, as I said earlier, with only 2 cars departing and technically 9 cars joining the Shmeemobiles in the 1 year. And in fact, if we rewind back just over 6 years to September 2015, at that point I had recently sold both my McLaren 650S Spider and the Abarth 595 Turismo and didn't actually own a car at that point. There were no cars in the Shmeemobiles just over 6 years ago, prior to the delivery of the Blue Crew, the Ferrari FF, the McLaren 675 LT and the Porsche 981 GT4. But from then, it's grown up pretty quickly. In fact, just over 3 years ago, before collecting the GT and Senna at Christmas, so only 37 months ago or so from now, I actually only had 5 cars in the collection. So this is why, with a few more on the horizon now, it's time to shuffle around things a little bit, let a few cars go. In fact, in my entire life, I own at the moment about half the cars that I've ever bought. So I do tend to buy more cars than sell. It might look the other way around just because of so many cars leaving at the same time. But to touch a little bit more on the future, there are a few inbound cars we know a lot about. The SF90 Stradale, which is due, I think, in about 6 weeks or so, which is quite exciting. After that will be the Lotus Emira, followed by the Zenvo TSR-S. So some big cars, but all 2-seat sports cars. Now, as I said, I'll run the M3 for a while, but there will be another daily on the horizon, and there are at least 2, if not 3, other cars that I have expressed interest in to hopefully add to the garage as well. So I think we can say probably 7 or so more cars down the line, which is a little bit crazy, hence why a few are going to be departing, but overall the collection is still going to be growing, which is a little bit crazy. Now, one of the reasons for the Taycans having picked up so much more in value recently is because of the EV benefits that come if you have a car through your business, for example. Now, obviously I'm private, so I own this privately, so I don't actually get to enjoy those EV benefits, but that's exactly where somebody like AMF steps in, and one of the reasons why the values are up. But also, as I said, in terms of the funding of my new cars, the financing of the different cars coming in, well, I do own some outright, like, for example, the GT Black Series, so that it can be in Dubai, the GT500 in the US, some of the others around. It does often make sense to use different financial packages, and we've always worked very closely. The team at AMF have literally done everything, even the complicated ones like the Senna and the Ford GT. So I've always appreciated their help with all of that, and they actually came by recently as well. So I thoroughly recommend giving them a shout. I'll pop some information down below if you're interested in financing a car from all sorts of different segments, like these kind of things behind me. But overall, it's a big shuffle around because of new cars coming and just because of wanting to mix it up. I'm a car guy. I love different driving experiences. I have nothing wrong with EVs. Don't think for a second that the Taycan is leaving because I'm done with electric cars. I'm certainly not. We installed the CTEC ChargeStorm Connected 2 over this side of the garage, and I will be using it again. I guess I can probably plug the SF90 into it. I don't actually know what charging port the SF90 has yet. One I will learn in the not too distant future for sure. Also at my disposal is technically the team car, the Audi RS3 Saloon, very much a daily, as you can see from quite how grimy it is at the moment, running on winter tyres, 4-wheel drive, the default go-to car, which is in dire need of a clean-up, as is the GR Yaris, to be honest. The others all looking pretty good at the moment. But the other thing that I've actually enjoyed quite a lot recently with the collection is basically to take out different cars every night if possible, to rotate between, to not necessarily need a daily, to just drive all of the different cars for their different experiences. And over the last 2 weeks, I've probably taken 8 or 9 different cars home, I would say, overnight, whichever it might be, whether it's the Senna, whether it's the Hurricane STO, just to drive the cars. The worst thing you can do with cars like these is leave them sitting, is leaving them standing. You want the fluids to get flowing, you want to get them up to temperature, you want to find the little niggles when they come up before they become disastrous. So it's actually for the best at the end of the day. And with the SF90 coming, I actually want to do a lot of miles with that car. I want to take it on a big adventure if I can. There is minimal luggage space, we could say, but I'd like to daily drive it with the electric side of it after all, to see what that's like. As I said, not getting rid of the Taycan for any negative reasons about electric, but when it comes to permanent cars in the collection, it's fun to just drive them, to not be worried about the mileage, to not try and keep them all as garage queens, to shuffle through, to drive each and every one of them as much as possible. So that's basically the plan going ahead, along with the other cars arriving on the horizon, and hopefully at some point also another project car. Obviously that would be fun to follow up the Red RS and the GR Yaris with something else, always keeping my eyes peeled for what that could be. For today though, a bit of an update on everything, saying farewell for the time being to 3 of the cars, 1 shortly to follow, for some exciting things soon to arrive as well. That's it for now though, thank you very much for watching as always guys, and I'll see you again very soon. Cheers!